deflected in front. And Finney is there to finish it. A broken play off the end boards. Detroit's in it. Down by just 2. 1:26 to go in the second period. Wings get it to the front. Blues can't clear it. Quick shot deflected in. They've scored. Jordan Binnington going right to the referee to talk that one over. But the Wings are back within 1. It's 4-3 with 58.3 to go.
That to me was the beginning of the end for the Blues. That was where things started to look bleak. And it's odd to say that it was a 4-2 lead and things were starting to look bleak, but the timing of that back-to-back goal was the worst thing that could happen for the Blues. And let's not forget, there was still 59 seconds on the clock after Comfort made it 4-3. Binnington had to make a couple of saves to avoid that game being tied going into the third period. But right there, those two goals that were scored 27 seconds apart, it felt like the Blues didn't know how to dig themselves out of that hole. Welcome everyone into our extended post-game coverage. It's the fourth period here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. As always, it's brought to you by First Community Credit Union, powered by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnuts Brewing Company, Zwickle Light. Along with Grant Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario as the Blues fall 6-4 to the Red Wings. Have a 4-0 lead midway through the second period, and then Berggren scores on the power play, and the Blues give up 6 straight goals. I went back and looked at this too. From the moment Berggren scored, the Blues had a total of 11 shots on goal in what would be considered, again, I'm going to do quick math here, which is never a good thing for people. This is high school math for our public school math right here by Ferrario. 12:08, so 32:08. So in 32 minutes and 8 seconds, they had 11 shots on goal. 11 shots on goal in 32 minutes and 8 seconds. And then from there, the Blues just couldn't gain any momentum. And Detroit gets 1, and then they get 2 in 27 seconds. And then it stays that way midway through the third period. And you're thinking, okay, maybe that the Blues could just get 1, just like Clayton Keller did for Utah, to where the Blues pulled themselves back in. Blues then would give up 1. And it's like, okay, you got to be the team that scores the next goal to kill momentum. But then DeBrincat skates in and he scores off the rush. And then that right there, it felt like the Blues were never coming back into this one. So we want your reaction. We're live up on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Of course, you can always text me at 314-399-9646. We'll hopefully get some reaction from the Blues locker room. We'll hear from Jim Montgomery. We'll also have our final look as the Blues fall to the Red Wings 6-4. But let's just jump right into it tonight with our Ted Drew's 3 takeaways.
It's time for tonight's 3 takeaways, presented by Ted Drew's Frozen Custard, a St. Louis tradition for over 95 years. Unmatched quality, unforgettable taste.
So I think the first takeaway is what we were talking about right there. I do think the Blues have a little bit of an adversity problem, which is crazy to say. Grant and I were talking about this during the game. That's what the Blues were so good at last year in that second half, dealing with adversity. When one thing would happen, they'd push themselves back in. But, man, it's just a trend right now. When something weird happens in a game, it unravels for the Blues. And I don't know if the Berggren goal would be considered weird. The Finney one will. The Finney one, to me, is the one that's like, okay, the Blues see that, and it's like, man, you got to be kidding me. Look, that was a weird bounce. It bounces off a Falk skate right to the front of the net where Finney is standing and then takes the shot. But then from there, you allowed the goal 27 seconds later. It's that snowball effect. It starts, and the Blues don't know how to stop it. And that's at the end of the second period when 27 seconds, if that one doesn't go in, the Blues are 90 seconds away from closing out the period 4-2. You regain yourself, and then you push yourself back into the third period. But that wasn't happening in this one. Comfer scores that deflection goal, which, again, that has nothing to do with Jordan Binnington. That's just a tip right in front of the net. But it still happened. And then from there, the snowball just continued to push. And second takeaway for me on top of that snowball was those last 3 goals that Detroit scored. Man, it was so easy for them to get into the Blue zone. And, you know, I go back to that Dallas Stars game. The Blues made it impossible for Dallas to get into the zone. They would essentially have to put it behind the players on the Blues end and go back and get it. That was not the case in this game. This one was a matter of through the neutral zone, take the shot into the back of the net. The Finney goal was that way to where it was rushed out of the Detroit end, and they just put it through, go down and get it, bounces off of Justin Falk. We mentioned that's a weird bounce, but then the DeBrincat goal. It's in the offensive zone for the Blues. They turned it over to DeBrincat in his own end and just skates through the middle of the ice, goes right in, goes to the middle, and shoots it past Jordan Binnington. There was no holding him up. There was no standing him up at the blue line, making him dump it in. It was just a matter of skating over it, going to the middle, and then wristing the shot pass. Simone Edvinsson, another one. This one, you go in, you make the pass at the blue line, you go to the front of the net, it goes wide up to the blue line, and he just puts it on net, and it gets deflected off of Braden Shen and into it. Look, it's going to sound like an excuse to a lot of people. There were some weird bounces in this one. You can't deny it. The Finney goal going off of Falk's skate, the Edvinsson goal that just deflects off of Braden Shen's back and into the back of the net. But those weird bounces don't negate the other 3 goals that were scored to put the Blues back on their heels. And again, that goes back to the adversity. It just feels like the Blues didn't know how to stop what was coming at them from the Detroit Red Wings. And then the third takeaway is Robert Thomas's injury. Not so much impacting this game because, yes, he had 2 assists, but, if you go off of Corsi rating, his line didn't generate as much offense as the other 3 lines did. Holloway, Sundqvist, Bukestad, Walker, Pius Suter, Pavel Buchnevich, Holloway, Shen, Kyrou all generated significant scoring chances and high danger chances throughout this game at even strength. But I think bigger picture is the real question, because it was very obvious that the Blues were missing Robert Thomas there at the end to just kind of get a stop and push for some offensive zone time. And I went back and looked at it. No, we don't know the severity of this one, and I'm not going to speculate here. It's an upper body injury. We'll maybe find out from Jim Montgomery. My guess, he's going to tell us we'll know more tomorrow. But last year when they lost Robert Thomas, they were 4-7-1 in the next stretch of 12 games. And then, of course, Robert Thomas came back, and the Blues started to pick up the pace a little bit more. But 4-7-1 when they were without Robert Thomas, and 7 of those 11 games, they were also without Philip Broberg. So it is a loss for the Blues if it's more than just a game. And again, I'm not going to speculate. We don't know. But the optimistic side of this one is that's why the Blues brought in all of these centers this offseason. Pius Suter, Nick Bukestad, on top of having Oscar Sundqvist and Braden Shen. There's your centers. You'll have to find a way to dig yourself out of it, because what you don't want is 2 losses to become 3 losses and 3 losses to become 4 losses. And it's a trend that you just can't stop and you start to feel suffocated with. An honorary takeaway, I guess if we can throw that one in here, because I know we're doing the Ted Drews 3 takeaways. It's not, trying to think of the best way to phrase this. You're going to look at this final score and say, what's going on with the goaltending? And rightfully so. 4 of their 8 games that they have played, they have given up 5 or more goals. Tonight doesn't feel like it's all on Jordan Binnington. But, man, to have another game where 6 goals were scored in this streak of 8 versus the Blackhawks, and then you had 7 versus Utah, 6 tonight, it's just not the feeling that the Blues really want as a team that put a lot of emphasis on the defensive structure that they play and a stingy brand of hockey. You saw it against the Dallas Stars earlier this year. You saw it against Vancouver. But, man, right now these teams just finding ways to transition through the neutral zone, get into the zone quickly, and then just create chaos in front of the net. So that's our Ted Drews 3 takeaways. Ted Drews, it really is good guys and gals. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll get to some of your thoughts. We'll also see if we can get some reaction from the Blues locker room, and we'll have our final look. All of that coming your way next as the Blues fall to the Detroit Red Wings 6-4 out in Detroit. 3rd straight loss of the season. Alex Ferrario with you. This is St. Louis Blues hockey.
Rink wide from Neighbors. The puck over to the far wing. Cutting it into the middle. DeBrincat shoots and scores. Detroit's tied the game up. Turnover inside the offensive blue line. DeBrincat gets his goal finally, and Detroit has come from behind a 4-goal deficit to a 4-4 tie. 9:59 to go, third period. Kyrou turns it over inside the blue line. Kopp to the far wing. Pass coming back to Kopp. Slides through to Comfer on the near side. Looking up to the blue line. Shoots and scores! Edvinsson sneaks one in from the blue line. Detroit has taken the lead. It's 5-4. 9:12 to go in the third period.
I take no joy in playing that audio as the soundbite of the night, but I think that was the impactful part of this hockey game. Again, going back to it, it felt like that Comfer goal was the start of the end, but man, DeBrincat scoring that one at the midway point to even it up, and then the Edvinsson one going in. The Edvinsson one felt like there was no coming back from this hockey game, which is crazy to say when there's 9 minutes and 12 seconds left to go, but it just feels like that's where the Blues are at right now. That is our soundbite of the night as we're back here for the final time on our extended postgame coverage. It's the fourth period, and it's presented by First Community Credit Union. Alex Ferrario along with Grant Francis as we are live up on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. We're also live over on our text line. You could jump in there, 314-399-9646. Still waiting to get some Montgomery audio from Detroit. When we get that, we'll have that for you. We'll also get to our final look momentarily, but I did just want to go through some of these comments over on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL, because as you would imagine, a lot of frustration and a lot of concern about the Blues early on. This was the one that really popped out to me. Anybody that can tell me that this is a playoff team right now is lying through their teeth. I know it seems odd to say because of the Blues losing this many in a row, but man, it is I'm going to sound like Tony La Russa here. It's the first month of the season. Like, does anybody believe the Utah Mammoth are going to be the best team in the Western Conference this season? Does anybody believe that the Dallas Stars and Minnesota Wild are going to be two of the worst teams in the Western Conference? Does anybody believe the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be the worst team in the National Hockey League? No. I mean, this is what happens. Go back and look at last season. In fact, I actually kind of think I want to do this right now that we're talking about it. If you go back and look at where teams were at in the first month of the season, let's go to October 31st at the end of the first month of the season. You had in the Western Conference teams that were sitting outside of the playoffs, the Edmonton Oilers and the Colorado Avalanche. Both were sitting at 10 points with a sub-500 record at the end of October. In the Eastern Conference, the Montreal Canadiens, who made a push towards the end, got into the playoffs. So did the Ottawa Senators. You had the New Jersey Devils as the best team in the National Hockey League with 16 points. This is what happens early on. Now, what I can't explain are the struggles in their own end and the amount of goals that are going in. Sometimes offense is at a higher pace than defense and goaltending early on in the season. We've talked about that in the past. But, man, what's crazy about this for the Blues is they're able to play two really strong periods. And then it's that third one that gets away from them. Whether it is the first period, like we've seen a majority of this season, or it's the third period, like this one tonight. There's one period that the Blues are really, really pushing to get that strong 20-minute performance. Because tonight, I thought they had it in the first. Clearly the best team on the ice in that first period. Second period, good up until they took that penalty and gave up the power play goal. And that's the adversity that we've talked about. So, no, I'm not going to sit here and panic. 2 weeks into the season, there are obviously some concerning traits that we are seeing. But no, we're not going to overreact to that point. There are certain areas that I think are going to get fixed. I don't think Jordan Binnington is going to have a sub-900 goals against average or save percentage. I don't think you're going to see a total of 4 even strength goals with Thomas, Kyrou, Buchnevich, and Holloway. These are things that when you look at the back of the hockey card, when you go over to Hockey Reference and you see what their stats are every season, these are the things you go look at and you say, yeah, it got back to what you expected it to be. But they obviously have to get there soon. That's the real issue here. It's not a matter of will they get there. It's at what point do you get there? Because if you wait until February, you're not going to put together another 12-game win streak. Not in this Western Conference. Not with these teams that are looking like they're going to be a lot deeper than years past. But you got to figure it out before Thanksgiving. You don't want to be sub 500. You'd like to be 5 or 6 games above 500. That's where really things make a difference in the Western Conference. All right, before we get to Jim Montgomery, we're still waiting on some of that audio. Let's get our final look tonight.
It's time to take a look back at tonight's game with the final look.
Driven by Pure Performance. Only stop for all your aftermarket vehicle needs.
You know, I really liked some of the line combinations before things got chaotic in the second period. And, you know, with the Robert Thomas thing, you got to think that it was only one shift in the third period. It might not have been a play that happened on the third period. It could have been something that happened in the second period that just lingered and festered. And then by the time he got on the ice in the third, it wasn't feeling right, and he took himself out of the game. That's what you have to wonder if took place. But, man, prior to that, I really thought they found the line. I found the line chemistry. I really thought they found the mixture that was going to work. You know, Jim Montgomery talked about putting workers on every line, and it showed. You know, you had Neighbors coming up with 2 goals. You had Joseph just playing like a bullet out there. I mean, he was flying everywhere, creating offense after opportunities. And then you had Suter and Pavel Buchnevich. It was the first time that I really felt like I noticed Pavel Buchnevich at even strength. And your fourth line with Sundqvist and Holloway, Jim Montgomery liked it so much that he moved Holloway up. But something happened with those combinations, and maybe it was a nagging injury to Robert Thomas that you just lost that flow, but you lost that flow in the middle of that second period and never were able to regain it back because, again, final 32 minutes and 8 seconds, Blues had 11 shots on goal, while Detroit went out there and outscored you 6-0. So that was something that was very noticeable, and it's just a matter of what happened. That's the question that I think you're probably asking right now. And on top of that, you know, I know we talked about this with Joe in terms of, you know, do the Blues have to abandon that transition game that they play to where they bump the puck out of their own end and they're off to the races and their defensemen getting involved. And it's so odd to say because their defensemen getting involved to me is what really creates that threat of offense for the Blues. But again, tonight, 6 defensive zone turnovers, and you also had 3 odd man rushes for the Detroit Red Wings. So it's just something that it doesn't look right compared to what it looked like last year at the end of the season. And maybe they just didn't have that aha moment. Maybe they're still waiting for that aha moment. And it's a tough time to have an aha moment once you lose your top centerman in Robert Thomas. And I know I already saw a couple of comments over on our YouTube chat and also on our Twitter account saying that, you know, Robert really hasn't been doing much. Is that a bad thing? Yes, it's a bad thing. Because you lose a line of flow. Now, we'll see what the chemistry looks like if he's not playing in that game against Pittsburgh on Monday, but you lose a line and you lose that flow, that natural evolution of offense after offense after offense when you don't have a guy like Robert Thomas. And obviously, defensively, you lose somebody that's very impactful late in hockey games. So that's our final look. It's brought to you by Pure Performance. Let's get a little audio from Jim Montgomery and take you back to what he had to say pregame.
It's time to hear from the head coach, Jim Montgomery, presented by Fisher Window and Door Store, offering quality American-made Marvin windows and doors. Visit their showrooms in Brentwood or East Alton, Illinois.
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge is creating our identity of being a checking team, you know, so that's going to be our focus, is to be a really good checking team. That starts in the offense as well.
They did it tonight. They did it. The problem is they only did it for one period. You know, if I look back through the season thus far, there's been 2 games where I feel like we've seen the Blues play 60 minutes. And I guess if you want to get real particular with it, you know, Vancouver did make a push in that second period against the Blues, scored a shorthanded goal, had that even strength goal to make it a 2-goal hockey game, but the Blues just pushed back in the third. So 40 out of 60 minutes, and I believe that's what Jim Montgomery said after that one. We're still looking for that 60-minute game. Dallas, you could argue, was as close to a 60-minute performance as you would ask for, but Dallas had that push in the third period. You'd expect that. That, to me, was the lone game that I think we saw them play a full 60 minutes, but it's been a lot of this. It's been a lot of you get two really good periods, but that third period, whether it's the first one or the last one, that's the one that seems to really stumble the Blues. So, for this Blues team, it's going to come down to consistency. You want to know when they figure it out? They'll figure it out when they have a 60-minute game. And right now it might be an uphill challenge for them if Robert Thomas is out. We'll have to wait to find out how long he could be out for the Blues. So that is going to close it down for us tonight. We will talk to you on Monday when the Blues take on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Final game on this quick 2-game road trip, and they'll kick off a back-to-back set as they'll play Tuesday night on home ice. But the Blues take on Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, who Pittsburgh was in action earlier tonight. They lost actually 5-4 in a shootout. They were leading that game and then fell 5-4 in a shootout to Columbus. So it might be a ticked off Pittsburgh Penguins team. Hopefully the Blues will be ticked off after this one as well. That game on Monday will be a 6 o'clock puck drop with Chris Kerber and Joe Vitale, which means we've got the pregame festivities beginning at 5 o'clock right here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN. Huge shout out to Grant Francis, our producer, who's done a great job tonight. Once again, I'm Alex Ferrario. Hope everyone has a great rest of their evening, great rest of their weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday for Blues and Penguins right here on your home for the Blues 101 ESPN.